The year is 2002. And of the movies that you can think of that came out that year, we're not tackling Attack of the Clones today because I've got the hat on. We're talking about the Santa Claus 2, the Santa Clauser. And we have just seen
the Mrs. Claus.
The Mrs. Claus. And we've just seen a rough cut of this movie. And we're going to fix it. Cue that intro.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mirror Movie Universe podcast. My name is Dan. I am one of the co-hosts of this show, and across the aisle and across the country from me in sunny California is my little brother, Nate. Say hi, Nate.
Hello, everyone. You now know where I live, but it's a big state, so good luck. Anyway.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Santa Claus 2 today, the sequel to the Santa Claus. And we're going to fix it. So we're going to make a small change that would make it a lot better, hopefully. But before we do that, we have to talk about the movie and what happens in it. So the Santa Claus 2 opens with meeting a new elf. So we remember Bernard from the last movie. This time we're introduced to Curtis, who is very much a rule follower and wants everything to be done the way it was, where kids get coal and, you know, Santa's not all happy and stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he also has been shirking his duty to tell Santa that he has to get married to a Mrs. Claus. Otherwise, he will cease to be Santa.
Mm-hmm.
He comes up with a plan to replace Santa with a toy Santa lookalike at the North Pole. And then Tim Allen can take off the makeup for a little while, which I'm sure he loved, and go back to being a regular guy and find a wife. He has a little bit of magic left, not very much, and he can use that to impress someone. He goes back and we meet Neil and Laura and Charlie and the newest member of the family, who is Lucy, who is absolutely adorable. And she is convinced that he is Santa because he has reindeer. Anyway, he goes on a blind date with Molly Shannon, who's the biggest groupie for Santa ever, and decides that that's not good enough. And Charlie is getting in trouble at school, doing the worst thing that a kid in the early 2000s on a Disney movie could do, graffiti.
It's hanging from like a cool climbing harness from the ceiling of the gym. Give that kid a medal. Like, I don't care. Like, that's, you know, that was awesome back in the day.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He'd be a legend going into college now, but yeah.
Really graffitiing. Mm-hmm. And so Scott Calvin has to talk to the principal, and oh my goodness, sparks start to fly between this Scrooge-like principal of Charlie's and Scott Calvin. So meanwhile, back at the North Pole, Curtis has convinced Santa of two things. One, he loves hot cocoa. And two, every kid in the world should get coal because they are all terrible. Yeah. Meanwhile, Scott Calvin is falling in love with this principal, and he gets to use a little bit of his magic to make some snow fall and to have all of the teachers in her school get toys from when they were kids. It's really, really lovely. Mm-hmm. Oh, and at some point we meet the Council of Legendary Creatures. Doesn't really matter, except that he has to pull out a tooth at one point and have the Tooth Fairy fly him back to the North Pole.
No, it's not. His name isn't the Tooth Fairy. He's the Molinator.
The Molinator.
Yes.
Molinator. Yeah. Thank you for that correction, Nate. Yeah. So he goes back to the North Pole, has a showdown with the evil Santa who's imprisoned all the elves with these big walking toy soldier things. He beats him, and then he turns to the principal and he's like, hey, if you don't marry me right now, Christmas doesn't happen. And she says, okay. And that's it. Roll credits. So
that's more or less what happens.
That's in a nutshell, that is the Santa Claus 2. Nate, what do you like about this movie? I've seen it 100,000 times. You've seen it once.
I watched it a couple of days ago. Listen, I like a couple of things about this. I do not like it as much as the first one. The first one's the best one.
I don't think anybody likes it as much as the first one, but that's okay.
I think it does introduce the rising action well. I love the little visual gag where, like in the first movie, they use a magnifying glass and the legalese that says he's Santa Claus is like written in the border or something like that. And they zoom in on like, I think it's like a dot or like a little sweep of a thing and like the crossing of a T or something like that. And it, it's like, hey, you got to get married and all this kind of stuff. So like that's a cute introduction. I like that. I like the new elf guy. mostly because he is just me from when I was in middle school, really. I mean, he is. Um, and yeah. And then mostly like everything that I like about this movie follows everything that I like about the first movie, which is the relationship between the dad and the son. I think it's a genius move to have the son getting into trouble. And there's an exchange late in the movie when the son is like, hey, you know, you've been Santa Claus for, now I've known this for like, what they say, 8 years or something like that. And he's like, can you imagine how hard that is for me to keep that secret? And when other, you know, people say that their dad's a doctor or a firefighter or whatever, um, you know, like I can't say what you do at all because we're all about secrets. And that's great because that conflict is the central conflict of the whole movie. Everything else is secondary to that. You got three stories going on. You got dad and son, you got Scott Calvin and the principal lady, and then you got evil toy plastic Santa Claus who scared the crap out of me as a kid when I saw like 5 minutes of this movie on TV.
I've never seen it before.
No, I caught like 5 or 10 minutes on TV once. And I was like, what the heck is, because I didn't understand that was like a double Santa. I thought that's what Santa Claus looks like in these movies when I was a little kid. And so like, it was just scared the crap out of me. So that's part of why I haven't seen these movies. So there's those are the three main conflicts, and the best one and the most important one is the relationship with the son. And that little exchange later on is really neat because it takes something that was played for comedy in the first movie, that like take your dad to school, like career day or whatever, that they play for funny in the first movie is like serious in a relationship with the dad and the son in this movie. And I really like that. So yeah, Santa Claus 2 is pretty good. I enjoyed it. Dan, what did you like about Santa Claus 2?
I love so much of this movie. I think that the relationship between Scott and his son is fantastic, but better than that is the way they portray that blended family. So Lucy has come along. She's Charlie's sister, technically half sister, but very much like part of the family, calls him Uncle Scott, which I think is just so lovely and wonderful to see that relationship that he has with her, even though he has like no relation to her at all. It's such a great way to show a blended family. It's a really beautiful way to do that. I'm so happy that they did that because they didn't need to. No. And you still get a little bit of antagonism between him and Neil when like they're going to talk to the principal about what Charlie's doing, and Neil's like, let's just take a moment, because he's this and then, and Tim Allen's like, no, Charlie, promise you're not going to do it again. Okay, done. It's really great to see that, and to see them trying to co-parent. Like, can you imagine co-parenting with Santa Claus? It's just crazy. But I love the blended family thing. The scene with Molly Shannon is hilarious. I have no idea what her character's name is because she's just being Molly Shannon.
She's the lady who sings in the restaurant, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally in love with Santa. Like,
because you start that scene as someone who's never seen it before. You start that scene like, oh wow, like he's gonna find this woman on the first date. She loves Santa, great, and then it goes terribly off the rails, and then ends really awkwardly. And that comedy's it's pretty good.
It's not only is it funny, but it's such a great way to just be like, romance isn't what you think it is. Like, she on paper is perfect for Santa Claus, and he's like, nah, I'm not feeling it. So I think that's great. But more than that, I think my favorite part of all of this is the romance between him and the principal, and the conflict it causes with Charlie when Charlie's outside the house and he's throwing the snowballs, and Tim Allen goes aside, he's like, hey kids, knock it off, and Charlie's like, that's my dad. Like,
well, he doesn't say that's my dad. The girl he has a crush on is like, your dad's dating the principal, and that's what puts a knife in his side a little bit. So
but the romance stuff is so cute. It's so cute how he does the gifts with all the teachers, and they're having fun and everything. And she really is set up to be like this Scrooge-like character. Like, she hates fun, she hates Christmas, keep it out of the schools, da, 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 da. And he really warms that part of her heart. I think that whole thing is absolutely lovely.
Well, I'll talk about it later. Keep going.
No, I was going to set it up and say, but We do have quite a few things to fix in the Santa Claus 2, but by the rules of this show, you can only pick one thing to fix. Nate,
Yep.
what are you going to fix in the Santa Claus 2?
My least favorite thing about the Santa Claus 2 is not the terrifying Santa Claus toy thing that dresses up like Benito Mussolini and, turns the North Pole into a fascist wasteland. That actually, had that was entertaining. I think that the romance is really sweet, but I don't buy it.
What?
I don't buy the romance. I think that the characters are acted very well, but so you're talking. You talked in your summary about the magic that he used. Like he gives all the teachers presents, and there's a sleigh ride, and it snows on them and stuff like that. There is established a like he has a limited amount of magic. There's a little watch that counts down from 10, and you can only use so much. And every time he impresses or he uses magic, he doesn't, do anything like of himself. And what I don't like about this is that he never uses magic to even try to repair the relationship with his son. He has this magic watch and he only uses it on dates. So I'd like to see a scene where he's like, son, I made this amazing thing happen. I got you this present, something Santa-esque, right? And the magic watch goes down a little bit before the relationship with the principal starts. And the son is like, I don't care that you're Santa Claus or something like that. And it just doesn't work. And it teaches him that he can't fix everything with magic and he has to repair the relationship with his son on his own. And I feel like if you put that in there, that would make it a little bit better. Because as it stands, he only uses magic on the date that he goes on, which turns into a whole thing. And it is very sweet, but it's very rapid. I would have, if I could change like the whole structure of this movie, I'd make their relationship the whole year long. I wouldn't do just in like Christmas time, give it some time to like steep and develop a little bit. But you can't do that on a budget of reshoots. So try to use magic to fix things with his son and fail because you got to fix it yourself. And you don't even have to cut out any magic stuff with the principal lady because like I think there's a bit in the middle where he uses magic and it goes down like 3 numbers. So all you have to do
doesn't even have to add up. Yeah.
Doesn't even have to add up. All you have to do is shoot a scene where he tries to do some grandiose thing for his son and it doesn't work because he's got to fix it himself, and then shoot some inserts of the number going down on some second unit director's hand or something like that. All you need to do. I love the bit with the dad and the kid, and it's the most convincing part of the whole film, more so than the romance. Use some magic on it. That's all that I think about this movie. Is should have at least tried to use some on his son, because they introduced that really early, and then he goes on the date pretty late in the movie, and you're like, oh, you could use this the whole time, you didn't even try. Anyway, that's what I would fix about Santa Claus 2.
That's really interesting. I do think that there is a little bit of a spark between him and the principal. It's not totally based on the magic, because when he goes to clean up the graffiti with Charlie, they have kind of a moment at the beginning that gets his foot in the door. So I think that it's not totally based on magic. I think I'm trying to imagine. I think I can imagine it in my head where he could try to use it on Charlie, and Charlie's like not impressed by it because he's just like, Dad, I know you're Santa. I know you're Santa, and I'm not like 6 anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Like when I was 6, this was the coolest thing in the world, but I'm not 6 anymore and you're not around, and it sucks. I think that would be fine to do, to have him do something, or maybe like pull out the snow globe or something that from the first movie and just be like, hey, Charlie, do you remember the snow globe? And Charlie's like, Dad, it's not going to work. Like something to do that. I think that's a lovely idea, to bring in something a little bit more with him and his son. Sure.
Yeah, why not? This one also didn't feel excessively long, so you shoot a 5-minute scene in the middle, you're not padding the runtime or anything like that. I think it'll be all right. But yeah, Dan, what would you fix about Santa Claus 2?
Well, everything that you like about this movie, I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
I do not like the character of Curtis at all, and I did not like the evil toy Santa taking over the North Pole subplot
Mm.
thing. I think that whole thing just seems very strange because why is he suddenly evil? I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Why is
It's
the toy Santa evil?
it's played
Um,
like a strict adherence to the rules. He's like, I gotta follow the rules, and then it goes haywire.
yeah.
Um, but
So
yeah.
what I want to do is to make Curtis a lot more evil, and because the toy Santa in this is hapless. He's just like an imprinting thing. He does
Mhm.
whatever is people suggest it to him to do.
Yeah.
And so what I want to do is to shoot a scene where Curtis is conniving and evil, and he's like, "Oh, so Santa, oh, we're gonna do this. We're gonna. I remember the way it was." 1,000 years ago, every kid got coal one year because they were
Mhm.
all terrible, and I was a coal mining elf back in the day. Now we don't even have coal mining elves, and
Mhm.
and to show that he's doing all of this not just because he's some rule follower, but
Mhm.
everything he does in the movie is to try to change the way that things are done in the North Pole to be the way that he wants them to be. He's the one who
Mhm.
doesn't tell them, Santa, about the Mrs. Claus thing. He does that very late. He gets him out of the way. He's the one who comes up with the whole toy Santa thing. He's the one who's
Mhm.
telling him about the rules and kind of suggesting subliminally that he do all of this. So I think that it fits really well. You just shoot like a small little monologue, get that actor
Mhm.
back, plop it in toward the end, and you can even give him some redemption if you really want. It's a Christmas movie. Why not? Like Santa's
Mhm.
like, it's okay, Curtis, don't worry about it. He
Yeah.
can have like a little moment where he's like, I'm sorry, Santa, I didn't really mean to, and you're all good.
He's got the means, motive, and opportunity to be the antagonist, really. Um, yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that it's played by someone who does not look antagonistic, I think could be played for comedy as well. Um, I also like that it splits off from Bernard's character in the first movie. Bernard in the first movie is very much a rule following elf dude.
Mm-hmm.
And Curtis takes that on almost entirely in Santa Claus 2, and Bernard is like super duper chill. So there's more of a shift in his character. It doesn't really make sense, but if you show Curtis being absolutely, by the book, like ridiculous about it, you can have a bit where Bernard reacts to this and he's like, well, maybe, he would act this, but he realizes that maybe following the rules all the time isn't great. And so he takes the stance that he takes and leads the snowball rebellion against the Nazi toy soldiers at the end. But yeah, that works. You can play many things off of that. Curtis is the villain kind of plays well.
I know that
Yeah.
it doesn't set things up well for the Santa Claus 3, but we're not there yet, so I'm fine with
Also, I
it.
don't care. I
Yeah,
don't. I don't. I don't care.
just make him the
Um.
villain and deal with the consequences later.
Yeah. Make that another elf in the last movie. It doesn't. A lot of stuff in that movie doesn't matter anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, tell us down in the comments whose fix you liked better. Would you have used some of the magic in the relationship between the dad and the son? Would you have made Curtis more of a villain-like character? Would you have done neither and done your own fix? We're open to steal your ideas constantly. Just put them down in the comments. We'll just take them. And in the meantime, like, subscribe, comment, and all of that bull crap. And we'll see you next time.
For the Santa Claus 3, the escape clause.
Oh, man. See ya.